What up, guys, and welcome back to Thomas Reacts here on the 360 Experience with myself, Thomas Mabaso. The Secretary General of African National Congress and the President of African National Congress are still under fire after attending an inauguration in Zimbabwe, the inauguration of MNANGAGWA in Zimbabwe, despite what the SADC mission that went to Zimbabwe said. Because if you remember, the SADC mission that went to Zimbabwe to check if everything was done legit in Zimbabwe, they came back and said that the elections in Zimbabwe couldn't reach the threshold to even be considered free and fair. So guys, Ringisai from the ISS, the Institute of Security Services, the ISS, went to BizNews to actually clarify to South Africans how dangerous is this president, how dangerous it is for African National Congress to actually support ZANU-PF and to support MNANGAGWA, knowing exactly that we are going to elections in 2024. So guys, I hope that you're going to stay with me. It is not going to be a lengthy video. I just want you to listen to his analysis on everything that he says about the African National Congress, Fikile Mbalula, and President Cyril Ramaphosa essentially attending the inauguration in Zimbabwe.
What now for Zimbabwe? We ask Ringisai Chikohomero, a political analyst with the Institute for Security Studies. Ringisai, you've just returned from Zimbabwe where you voted. Tell us what you experienced there.
Thanks, Chris. It was an experience different from the previous election that I participated in. Especially, I voted in Manicaland, and I had an opportunity to drive around Manicaland as a province. I went to every district and a good number of the constituencies. And the level of chaos and unpreparedness that I came across in areas like Chipinge, Mutasa, was unprecedented. The amateurish mistakes that should be had that ZEC has done, like they've misplaced the face of a candidate against a wrong symbol or a wrong party or vice versa, some things like that. And that some places did not have any communication as to when they'll get the ballot box. I was at some Ward 1 in Chipinge up to 2 a.m. On the 24th. And there was no communication whatsoever from the ZEC as to when the ballot box would arrive. Now, this is quite unprecedented, especially for a country and an institution that prides itself on being very efficient. To quote the chief electoral officer, they are meticulous. This was out of character. And one has to think that, is this calculated? Is this really that they've been caught unawares after they declared that they have bought the ballot, they were ready to go, they've been preparing for this for 5 years? So there are a lot of questions. There were a lot of questions. And also the unavoidable presence of what is called the Forever Association of Zimbabwe. At almost every polling station that I went through, and this is a quasi-ZANU-PF affiliated security backed organization that was doing what they were calling exit polls for the electorate. But when you actually spoke with villagers, I had the opportunity to speak to some elderly villagers. They were actually of the mind that no, the FAS was a legitimate part of the electoral process where you have to pass by and they will tell you who to vote for, how to vote, and how to do that process. So this is what we came across. When we read the SADC report, it's really nothing that was thumbsucked. This is what we came across. This is what we saw traveling the length and breadth of Manicaland. So it was quite an election. I still feel that there was some method to the madness, that this was calculated. And you know, in the mix of this madness, you then get confusion around the tabulations, the arrest of civil society organizations that were engaged in parallel voter tabulation right at the point of counting, or the frustration that would get into polling station agencies and observers who were, at times were only paid for 1 day, which is the 23rd, and not prepared for the 24th. And even the citizens themselves were supposed to vote on the 24th. Remember, the 23rd was declared a holiday, but the 24th was not declared a holiday. So people had to choose between going to participate in the plebiscite or going to work. So all this really created an atmosphere of I would say, unfairness towards the electorate who might rightfully feel disenfranchised by this process.
Yes. But I don't believe it was for a mistake, man.
So what you've described makes the concerns raised by international organizations seem very valid. But it's a done deal, isn't it? Is there any legal room to maneuver, or is that it?
No, as we speak, this is a done deal. President MNANGAGWA is now the president of Zimbabwe, and we're in for the 5-year run. Nelson Chamisa's Triple C did not take up the set legal route of challenging the presidential elections. And this is for a number of reasons which they tried to explain to us in a number of documents that they've since produced. One, fear of the credibility of the process itself. If the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission proved itself to be uncredible, not credible and biased, what would happen with the courts, and with the wisdom of hindsight, what happened in 2018, and also what happened to the run-up of the elections, the number of cases that were litigated just post the nominations court sitting. So where we are now is a done deal, and I think the region itself finds itself in a bind of sorts where they have to figure out what happened. I think the problem here is this is the SADC report is unprecedented in the way that it described it, the process in Zimbabwe, and coming short of actually declaring the elections unfree, unfair, and not credible. And I think the Troika is sitting with a headache to say, how do we proceed now? Do we call for an extraordinary summit? How do we sanction Zimbabwe? And bearing in mind that most of the Southern African countries, like any country, have shortcomings when it comes to elections. So this has a direct implication on the next round of elections. So whatever they do now can be precedent setting. So they have to be treading very carefully. But
that is really dangerous, guys. If you think about the fact that we are going to elections in 2024 and you are listening careful to what this man is saying, it is very dangerous, man. It is so dangerous, man. That's why South Africans sometimes we take some of these things light. But Ramaphosa going to Zimbabwe to support MNANGAGWA, it is huge, guys. It is huge. Because like this man is saying, what happened in Zimbabwe could set the precedent in Africa, man. It could set the precedent in the SADC region.
It's really open to the Triple C's, the political options, trying to go on a regional offensive to try and build up and drum up support around some form of dialogue. The present moment, it's difficult to see the form and shape that this dialogue will take. But I think that is where the space is now, only some political conversations and political pressure.
Now, South Africa doesn't seem to have a problem with the outcome of the elections. Our president...
No, not South Africa, man. The ANC, not South Africa, the ANC. Make it clear, South Africans are not supporting ZANU-PF, South Africans are not supporting MNANGAGWA, and South Africans are not in support of President Ramaphosa going to Zimbabwe to actually legitimize MNANGAGWA. So say the ANC, not South Africans. The South Africans and South Africa is not behind that.
President Cyril Ramaphosa attended the inauguration of his counterpart in Zimbabwe. How do you interpret that attendance?
Well, if it were in attendance alone, that would be, in a sense, diplomatic. Without the due processes of the Troika going through, there is really nothing at this point in time that would make any president or any country say Zimbabwe's elections were out of tune and the results are not in line with the will of the people. They have to process the report first, which is the diplomatic thing. They have to process the final report, sit with it, discuss it, and then come up with a position. Hopefully they will. But what is concerning is the kind of utterances around, the kind of utterances that we have seen from President Ramaphosa, the utterances that we have seen mostly from the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, who has really gone all out. You would say crying more than the bereaved, or celebrating more than the betrothed, in the way that they are declaring that ZANU-PF is the legitimate winner.
And Mbalula celebrating this thing and keep saying that the Zimbabweans are with the ZANU-PF. I mean, like, if the Zimbabweans are with the ZANU-PF, why are so many Zimbabweans scattered all over the world, man? If Zimbabweans are in support of ZANU-PF, why are Zimbabweans scattered all over the world? Why are Zimbabwe coming in numbers to South Africa to seek for a better life if they are in support of ZANU-PF and MNANGAGWA, man? This is exactly why people were so mad at Mbalula. This is exactly why people are so mad at Mbalula, man. You can see exactly what's happening in Zimbabwe. You can see, like, how many people are leaving Zimbabwe, going outside to seek for a better life. Then you have the nerve to go on the national platform and say that the Zimbabweans are in support of ZANU-PF. How is that possible, man? How is that possible? It makes no sense. It makes no sense, like, guys. Millions and millions of Zimbabwe came to South Africa, and some are coming to South Africa because you know that now it's final. The gentleman just said it's final. Mnangagwa is the president of Zimbabwe. There's nothing that anybody can do right now. Mnangagwa is the president of Zimbabwe, man. People can only speak. We can only do these reaction videos, but there's absolutely nothing that we can do basically to get him out of power. So if the people of Zimbabwe were in support of this regime, if the people of Zimbabwe are in support of ZANU-PF, why are the people of Zimbabwe leaving the Zimbabwe in high numbers? Why are people leaving their own country in high numbers if they are in support of everything that the ZANU-PF has been doing, man?
That there is now space for puppets, that there is it is an anti-imperial drive, you know, all the kind of rhetoric and the narrative that really does not deal with substantive issues. Actually, they deflect on the real issues and move on to this hyperbole and hackened, overused narratives around neo-imperialism and the West against the liberation movement and stuff. So for me, that is what is worrying, because then you cannot trust South Africa to be an independent or neutral arbiter in the process, even when the report is being discussed. Then you already know the lens that South Africa is bringing to the table when they're going to be talking about that report. This is not a neutral lens. This is a very tainted lens with a clear bias towards supporting the status quo and ZANU-PF.
Now, what now for the people of Zimbabwe? Those who are suffering from the fallout of decades of sanctions.
Yeah, I think the best answer is that the people will have to muddle through the next 5 years. What we've seen in the last 5 years of the Mnangagwa administration is a lot of contradictions. Contradictions in the sense that on one hand, you have a lot of public expenditure.
Man, I believe that the Zimbabweans, man, the best thing that Zimbabweans can do is to get out of their own country, man. Come to South Africa if you have to come to South Africa to seek for a better life, man. Don't sit in Zimbabwe if you are able to move, because I believe that a lot of people are poor and some, they don't have money, they don't have resources to actually get out of the country to go elsewhere to seek for a better life. But if you are able, the best way is to move, man. The best way is to move, man. I don't think, me personally, I would approach the situation otherwise. I also think if I was born in Zimbabwe and I was able to move, I would come to South Africa, man. I would come to South Africa, man. All this talk that South Africans are saying that Zimbabweans must fight for their own country and whatever and what. Man, people are just talking from a point of privilege, man. People are talking from a point of privilege. People don't understand that in Zimbabwe, people die. Whenever there are elections, people die. And people are now, are scared of the regime. People are scared of ZANU-PF regime right now in Zimbabwe. So I think the best way is to move, man. Move elsewhere if you are able to move. And it's so sad if you are not able to move. And I can't believe that today we are advising Zimbabweans to leave their own country, but there's nothing that they can do, man. There's nothing that they can do. Zimbabweans, there's nothing that they can do. You have to, like, just Just try to imagine another 5 years under ZANU-PF. Another 5 years under ZANU-PF, man. That's what the ANC guys are celebrating. That's what Fikile Mbalula is celebrating. Fikile Mbalula is all over social media, man. Just like a puppet, he's all over social media celebrating this win, making it clear that the ZANU-PF are the allies of the African National Congress. If South Africans don't think that is dangerous, man, we have something else waiting for us. We have something else waiting for us, man.
Which manifests itself in the form of infrastructure. A number of infrastructure projects that are flying all over the country. You also have a significant increase in the number of investments of sorts. It's very difficult because we don't really get official figures. When you read reports from the Ministry of Finance and the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, you are left with the sense that this is not the full story. But there has been a lot of movement in the mining sector. And we have seen this and increased activities around the mining sector and the infrastructure. At the same time, the core fundamentals, the microeconomic fundamentals remain unresolved. The currency crisis is with us. Even though the president in his speech spoke of trying to retain the national currency, the Zimbabwean dollar, to a preeminent role, the reality on the ground is the market is dictating which currency is being used. In essence, if you go into the streets of Harare, 92% of the transactions are in the US dollar currency. So it's either an aspirational declaration or a political declaration which has nothing to do with the reality that people are facing. And this is where the crisis is actually, that the ZANU-PF administration for some reason seems uninterested in tackling head-on the macroeconomic issues that would actually see the country take a different trajectory. By all means, they would rather avoid the issue of the currency crisis. They would rather avoid the issues around the hyperinflation, and they would rather avoid the high numbers of poverty that we have seen ever since 2019 in this administration, and which are on the roll. So these are very clear areas of concern, and we are very much likely to see a lot of illegal and illegal migrants flocking to South Africa, to Botswana, to Zambia, and other surrounding SADC countries.
Lastly, do you think there's any hope that the pre-election talk of reform and transformation will be translated into action under this government over the next 5 years?
Well, I think as we put it at the ISS 2 months ago, that the only game in town around issues of serious and substantive reforms is within the Africa Development Bank-led debt resolution the dialogue, where the creditors, especially the Western creditors, but also including the Chinese, are coming together to say, how do we resolve the debt crisis that Zimbabwe is in? And this is the space which we see as the only available legitimate platform to discuss reforms. Already the process has 3 pillars, which include governance, the governance pillar, which really talks about the fundamental political institutional reforms. There also the economics pillar, which really looks at the nuts and bolts around macroeconomic policy formulation and the kind of policy consistency that is necessary for Zimbabwe to prove itself that it can be a trusted partner in business, international financing. And the last one is the land reform, which essentially looks at property rights, the whole idea around the land reform and the whole questions around, the questions around the land reform rights about property rights. So this is the only space that is available for discussion. And it remains to be seen how the creditors, the members of the European Union, the Commonwealth, whose observers wrote very damning reports on the elections, how they're going to treat this. And to what extent are they going to push Zimbabwe for more stringent, tangible commitments, to ask Zimbabwe to really walk the walk instead of talking a good talk. That is going to be very important, because this is the only space where discussions and dialogue can take place. The other aspect of this is it remains to be seen how inclusive or how broad this space will become. In the previous processes, since they started in December, Parliament hasn't been involved. Opposition has not been involved, so it has been the government, the executive, and some selected civil society organizations, and the creditors on the other side. It remains to be seen if this can become a very broad-based, inclusive process to discuss the real, tangible, substantive reforms in Zimbabwe.
Thank you. That was Ringisai Chikohomero, speaking to Biz News about the future of Zimbabwe under another 5 years of ZANU-PF rule.
So guys, what do you think about the conversation, man? How do you feel about the fact that, especially if you are in Zimbabwe, how do you feel about the fact that the African National Congress has decided that they are going to support, the ZANU-PF have decided that they are going to support MNANGAGWA despite of what the SADC report is saying? Guys, please tell me what you think on the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button, and the most important part, guys, please subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabaso, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.